Good afternoon, and welcome to today's session on ancillary services. There is no doubt that ancillary services is one of the hottest topics in the airline industry today, and I'm fortunate to be we'll be joined shortly by a couple of experts representing both an airline and a TMC. But before I get started, I want you to cast your minds back to this morning's opening with Dwayne Ingram and Philippe Chirek. You'll recall a conference call where somebody dialed in at the wrong time. Now, that voice may have been mine, but the good thing for all of us here today is that with ancillary services, we're in the right place, we've got the right topic, and now is definitely the right time. I want to give a brief introduction on ancillary services and where we're at as an industry, just before I call Jason and John on stage. So if I start with the three ages, just to give a bit of context, okay? The three ages of ancillary services. We started with the birth of, we call them maybe the modern era of what we think of as ancillary service today. You're looking around the summer 05, 06 when Flybe and Ryanair announced they'd be introducing checked bag fees. Spirit in 2007, the US majors 2008. That's really the early days of when this movement got some momentum. And taking a look at the size of the market here, you really see that it's serious money, and these numbers here are actually a couple of years old, but I'd encourage you when Jay Sorensen from Idealworks presents tomorrow, I think it is, to go along and hear him, and he'll have the updated numbers, which I'm sure are even bigger than what I'm showing here on the chart today. Moving to the next phase, calling the propagation phase of ancillary services. This is really where we're at now. Starting to look at more channels of distribution, starting to look at better integration with IT systems. Oh, I actually went one too fast there. So the quote here, I want to make this quote. It's a great quote. All right, July this year, United Airlines was on a conference call, and the Wall Street analyst asked the question, if ancillary services was a baseball game, which innings are we in? I think it was John Tague, the then president of United, quoting, I think it was Glenn Tilton, the then CEO, saying, the answer was, we're only in the third innings. Now, if it was a cricket match, it'd be time to pack up stumps and go home because there's only 2 innings in a game. But luckily, we're talking about baseball with 9 innings, and so there's a long way to go in this yet. And that's when we get to the third age, which is we start to move towards maturity. And we're going to cover some of these themes today when we start to talk around personalisation. It's a real big buzzword at the moment. Start to look at things like, rebundling the whole merchandising and getting that mix right, and the whole revenue management of ancillaries and what we do there. So it's exciting, but at the same time, as many of you working for airlines know, it's an overwhelming prospect as well, because you're being asked a lot, the expectations are high, how do you deliver on those? Let's go through these in just brief detail, because I'm sure my guests will be speaking about them in a lot more detail on stage soon. First one, the marketing challenge. As an airline, really need to think about, is unbundling right for my brand strategy or not? And a number of other brand-related or airline-related issues. Moving on to the second, the delivery challenge. And here's where the IT issues really come to the fore. Because as an airline, where are you filing it? But things like, will the IT systems be ready? Will my departure control system be able to actually handle the ancillaries that I'm selling if I sell them earlier in the process and not just at the airport? The multi-channel challenge. Where am I distributing these products? Who am I selling it through? How am I doing it? We'll talk a lot about that today. And the customer service challenge. It's not just enough to sell it and then just to fulfill it, but then you've got also, when you have a disruption or a schedule change, how do you actually make sure you don't get a disassociation between what's been sold and the person turns up and it's not actually there when they think they should be getting, obviously, what they've paid for. And with that sort of brief sort of background or brief introduction, I've got a couple of guys coming up on stage today. The first is Jason Wynn, who's the Vice President of Global Distribution Systems and Point of Sale at American Express Business Travel, and also someone who maybe you've seen before, like about 5 minutes ago. John Liningen will be coming back on stage to talk about what Qantas is doing with their ancillaries. So if I ask you to put your hands together and give them both a warm welcome, and I invite the guys up on stage. Okay, I mean, Jason, I suppose if I start with you, I mean, from the TMC perspective, okay, what are your airlines, or what are your customers? So I suppose the corporates. What's the Amex perspective, and what are you hearing from customers about this whole ancillaries revenue revolution that we're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first bit is just in general, ancillaries and what it's doing and it has the prospect to do for the industry is obviously something that we're very supportive of, right? I mean, a healthy airline industry is a healthy agency industry for us. So where we're challenged right now is figuring out, as these things move forward and become more and more customized, how can we help in that? As a distributor, how do we help our customers by being able to make these offers to them? From the corporate standpoint, you know, there's a lot of confusion right now, right? There's no real good data or reporting on this. How do you bring policy in around if you're going to allow a certain piece of your corporate group to be able to upgrade or do things of that nature, but others not? And those are the things at American Express. We're putting a lot of investment, both with the GDSs and with third-party vendors on the back end of how do we support the customers to be able to have these things, but also, you know, be able to put a little bit of structure around it so that we can help our corporations identify how much they're spending on these things, but also make sure that they're doing it at the right time with the right traveling community.
Are the corporations trying to, you know, they push you in a certain direction, or are you sort of seeing a unified message from the corporations, or it's really, it depends on the size of them? I mean, really, what are they looking for?
I mean, typically, you know, for us as a global TMC, I mean, it's the larger clients that probably are the most vocal right now, and I think it is pretty consistent around how much of this are we actually spending right now, and can these things be brought into our negotiations with the airlines and the bilateral contracts and the rest of it. So, you know, from our standpoint, there's a couple of real fundamental challenges with that, right? So if you look at the point of sale, even if we were able to have access to that stuff, whether through a GDS or something else, how much time would it take to sell, right? I mean, is there a commercial model associated with that? How then, if we're booking it, and there's a change, whether it's a cancellation or something else, typically they're going to call us, you know, how do we make sure that we can refund that? And then the last piece of it, and I think is really the bit where the customer is really focused, is, you know, how do you get good data on that? So what is the total cost of trip, you know, airline by airline? And those are the things that we're working actively to solve.
Okay. I mean, I know that, John, even though you represent the direct channel for Qantas, so the interesting thing about Qantas is that they've got my understanding is that Qantas have a view where, you know, what's done online, especially with ancillaries, you want to be selling a lot of that through the indirect channel as well. I mean, do you want to just give the people here a brief sort of background as to where the Qantas thinking has come from on ancillaries, what products you're using, and then where you see the web fitting into the indirect channel as well?
Sure. Firstly, apologies for people who had to put up with me 2 sessions in a row. I was called in the last moment on the last one. So if you're tired of hearing this voice. I think what's really important is that you have an ancillary revenue strategy, that it's not just opportunistic and a follow the leader strategy. So at Qantas, it all comes down to the branding, because we're fortunate in a way that the Qantas Group owns 2 carriers. It owns Jetstar, which is positioned as a low-cost carrier, and Qantas Airlines. And it's constantly on senior management's focus, the brand differentiation between those 2 carriers. So it's not for Qantas, the Qantas Airlines, to actually follow the strategy of Jetstar and charging for meals and charging for eye shades and charging for entertainment on flights, because that disrupts the branding. However, if you have a look at the reports that are in the takeaway packs that Amadeus are given for this conference, you'll see that Qantas actually earns more money in ancillary revenues than any carrier outside the US. And the reason that is because Qantas Airlines makes a stack of money out of its frequent flyer program. And the reason that is because we haven't trashed the brand. We've kept the brand as a premium brand, and because of that, we're able to actually use that to tie in points partners and make our money doing that sort of thing. So I think what's really important is that there's a strategy in place that the airline can understand where the ancillary, and ancillary is really just making money outside of flying. It doesn't have to be charging for checked bags and things like that. So it's very important that the strategy exists to maximize the ancillary and that matches your brand, so you don't trash your brand and actually reduce your revenue potential. Having said that, what that leads Qantas Airlines into is basically a strategy where we offer a premium service for free. We don't unbundle fares. However, you can improve on that service by buying extra things. So yeah, you get free seat selection at check-in, but if you want to get seat selection before check-in, that costs. If you want to get an exit row seat, that costs. And in actual fact, what we're really doing is uncovering things that we have and that are limited in supply in those examples, and that customers want. And previously, they were grey products. I call them grey products, under-the-counter products. People knew they were available, but they didn't actually know how to get them. And in actual fact, it caused great stress amongst people because they knew they wanted to get this sort of seat or they wanted to be seated together, and it was quite anxious because they didn't really know how to get hold of the exit row seats. They'd have to show up at the airport and they'd have to flirt, or they'd have to bribe, or they'd have to bully, or they'd have to do something to get hold of one of these things, and sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. Inconsistent. It's a terrible customer proposition. In actual fact, and consistent with our brand, once you actually put a price on that, then it becomes much easier. It's a much more transparent thing. And the other thing we did was we actually allow all those payments to be made with frequent flyer points as well as cash. And that slides in with our, goes along then into our channel strategy, because we only allow frequent flyer points to be redeemed on our website. So we understand as a full-service premium international carrier, a lot of bookings are going to be made by travel agents. An awful lot are made by corporate travel agents, very important distribution partners for us. So they have to have access to these products. Even if I wanted to, you're right, I'm in charge of direct sales at Qantas. If I wanted to do it all myself and claim all the credit for it, it would be impossible, and we would actually miss out on potential customers. So it's never made sense for us to try and lock this in to just being a direct channel thing. But what we do is we only make points as a payment method available through our website. So that to us works as a bit of a trade-off and a good balance, where loyal customers, people that have a direct relationship with us, are coming to us directly anyway. People that are going through agents are going through their agents anyway. It seems to be the right mix for us.
I think you'll be filing through. Are you filing through ATP Co, or you will be with the ancillaries? What's the view of the stuff that you sell online today? I think you've got exit row seats and maybe excess baggage. Are they products that you'll be moving into the travel agency channel as well? Is that the plan?
So I think come the end of this year, we'll be filing all the seats and bags through ATP Co. And consistent with that, you look for new ways of doing things. I like what KLM are doing with, you get a free meal, but if you want a different meal, then you can pay for that. All those are good opportunities, I think, for a full-service carrier, so that you don't erode your base products, but you can actually build on top of that, add customer value, and take more money.
And what's your view on the industry standards argument? I was talking to a number of, let's say, the other TMCs or some corporate buyers, and I was surprised because it's not normally my job. I normally deal with the airline website, so I don't come across these guys as often as many people would. But yeah, seemed like there was a real sort of undercurrent of, what's going on here? When's this thing going to get sorted out? From your perspective, the whole industry standards argument, what's your position on that?
I think I understand the rationale for it. Why people want it, right? It's easier to then consume, to report on it and do the rest of it. I think from our standpoint, it's a pretty big chasm that needs to be bridged, and I think we look at it as kind of two distinct areas. One is the point of sale, and that's where the industry standard really comes into play. How do you make that available in kind of a standard fashion? But as we think more and more through it, and I was really interested in the last conversation around mobile, because we are making a big bet on mobile as well. Our position on this is that we really think that most of the sales for these things are actually going to come after the core booking. So we look at it as a post-booking, pre-trip and on-trip. And as we get more into mobile and get more information about travelers, right now airlines have a very deep vertical view of their travelers, but we have a very horizontal view because we see all the airlines they fly on, all the experiences they have. When you bring card data into that mix as well around their purchasing behaviors when they're on their trip, that's where we think that there's a real opportunity to provide relevant offers to the individual at a time when they may be more prone to purchase those things